All right, we'll call the meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We have a couple updates on the agenda. Item number 1 is being continued to a future date. It's a date uncertain at this time, but there'll be no action today on item number 1. An additional item number 2 has been continued to June 4th meeting. So we'll hear that at our June 4th meeting. So again, there'll be no action on that item here today. And then item number 4 has been withdrawn by the applicant. So we won't do any action on that item either. And so we will start today with item number 3. But first, I'll take a motion to approve the order of agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion, or anybody against? Motion passes. Item B, the minutes from our March 5th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. So we'll go on to item number 3, and we'll ask Donald up to the podium to walk us through that item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Donald Kress with the Department of Planning and Development. Item number 3, as the Chair has stated, is Laverne's 5th edition, a minor subdivision located here in the Laverne's 2nd Industrial Park area. This is 19th Avenue. Here's I-29 and 19th Avenue, 19th Avenue North and 45th Street. That's a slowly developing area there. This is, right now, it's an open field here. Just a couple of shots here along 43rd Street and along the levee that's on the west side. 45th Street is over here. So it has yet undeveloped. The corner of the detention basin here, this is a city detention basin that's in the lot to the north of it. The current zoning here is LI, Limited Industrial, and that fits with the current growth plan designation of industrial there, and that's the proposed use on this. The applicant proposes to take the 3 lots there and combine them into 2. So here are the 3 existing lots, the dashed lines, the solid line there is the line between the 2 new lots. And then there shows an access easement in here to access the properties. Pretty straightforward here, no new improvements are required for this lot. The applicant's representative, Brian Pattengale of Houston Engineering, is with us this afternoon. They wish to address the commission. Staff's recommendation is stated in your staff report and shown on the screen. That concludes our presentation. Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions? Seeing none, is the applicant here and wishes to add anything? Any questions for Mr. Pattengale? Seeing none, is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to add anything to this item, either for or against? Anyone else here for item 3? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I move to approve with the motion in the staff report.
Motion from Commissioner Stafford.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? If not, will you please take the roll?
Morgan. Aye. Schmidt.
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye.
Stoffern.
Aye.
Tassa.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Shuey.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you, Donald. Ask Megan up for item number 5.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commissioners. Item 5 is Airport 2nd Edition. This is an application for a conditional use permit to allow residential living in the LC Limited Commercial Zoning District. The subject property is located at 1919 University Drive North. This is part of Lot 2 and all of Lot 3 of Block 1, Airport 2nd Edition. For context, up on your screen, this is University Drive, just directly west of the subject property, and nearby is 19th Avenue North. These images show looking into the property as though you were on 19th Avenue North looking easterly, just at 2 different corners of the building, essentially. Here is the zoning map, so you can see the subject property is LC Limited Commercial. And I'm going to pop back to the images of the site. The request before you today is to essentially modify or change the previously approved conditional use permit. In 2006, the Planning Commission approved a conditional use permit. That was when this structure was constructed for up to 93 units. The structure was built with 75 units with ground floor office space. Last year in July, your commission reviewed a conditional use permit again to change that ground floor of office, nearly all of it, into residential units, except for about 1,200 square feet internal to the building and 1,200 square feet for a drive-through. At that time, the applicant was going to save that area for a potential tenant to come into the space. And today, the applicant is here requesting that 1,200 square feet internal to the building and then enclosing the drive-through area be converted to 2 additional units. And so last year, your commission approved up to 94 units, which was 1 additional unit from the previous CUP, and then they're asking for 96 units. So up on your screen, you can see the cutout here. This is where the location would be on the southwest corner of the building. This area would get filled in if this conditional use permit is approved. There is sufficient parking on site for all of the residential units. There have been no inquiries on the application. And up on your screen are conditions. One thing that the applicant noted was to retain the ability to convert the ground floor in the future back to a use that is permitted by right in the LC Limited Commercial Zoning District. And so that's where you see bullet point 2 allows for that to happen without needing review by your commission, so long as it meets all the approved uses and other requirements of the Land Development Code. Nate Volmuth, the applicant, is here should you have any questions. I would note if you wish to make a motion, use the one here versus in your packet. What it did is just remove the word existing from the building, since with this application they would enclose that drive-through. So just semantics, but that's a change up in your screen. Staff's recommending approval. That concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Megan? Any questions from the applicant? Or any, sorry, do you have anything to add? Only got questions. Sorry, thanks. Any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, is anyone else in the audience here? We have 2 legislators joining us today. It makes me nervous, but that's good. Any questions from the audience or any comments from the audience for or against? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion to approve per the, as shown on the screen.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Tassa.
Aye.
Gunkelman.
Aye.
Shuey.
Aye.
Morgan.
Aye.
Schmidt.
Aye.
Stoffern.
Aye.
Rosenberg.
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. And the motion passes. Moving on to number 6 with Luke.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Luke Mormon with the Planning Department. Item 6 on your agenda is Erskine's addition. This is a zone change which is located at 1002 and 1008 10th Street South. If you follow my cursor on screen, I'll give some context with 10th Street South here, 10th Avenue South, and then 13th Avenue South is shown on the bottom of the imagery there. The applicant is requesting a zone change from MR2 multi-dwelling residential and SR3 single dwelling residential to PI public and institutional zone for lots 14 through 19, Block BB, Erskine's addition. Please note that on the staff report, page 1 has a error on it for the existing and proposed zone and use. And just to clarify, the existing use is a religious institution, which will remain. And then the existing Erskine's Historic Overlay District will remain. And the proposed zone is PI and not SR3. For some site photos, on the top, we're facing south at the subject property from across 10th Avenue. And then on the right side, we're facing southeast at the subject property from the intersection of 10th Street and 10th Avenue. And then on the bottom, we're facing northeast at the subject property from 10th Street south. Again, the zoning is currently MR2 and SR3 with their proposed zoning of PI, public and institutional. And the intent of this is so the applicant can allow a larger sign for their church than what is currently allowed in the MR2 and SR3 zone. We've received and responded to 3 inquiries about the project. One, we discussed what can be developed in the PI zone and just the current intentions with the owner and the applicant. Staff finds all criteria to be met and are recommending approval. The project representative, Stephen Apple, is here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Luke?
So Luke, even though there's been a church there, I grew up across the street from this. There's been a church there forever. It was never, the zoning was never changed for that.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm not sure the entire zoning history, but as far as we can tell, it's just been MR2 and SR3 for quite a while.
Luke, is this intended to be a building mounted sign or is this a blade sign that's in towards the right of way?
Yeah, the applicant could maybe give some more details what their intentions are, but just the FYI, all the signage improvements would have to go through the inspections department for a specific sign permit. But
Any other questions for Luke? If not, we'll ask the applicant up and maybe give us a little information on the sign. Thanks for being here. Please stay within the roping we have now. Is that the new rule? I wasn't informed. But yeah.
Hi, so you were wanting to know a little bit more about the sign?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily have a specific plan in place at this time of exactly what it would look like, but there's essentially two options that we would be considering. One would be a surface mounted that would face 10th Street, and then the other would be there's a base there that faces sort of diagonally towards 10th Street that used to have a monument sign. When Salem Free Church was meeting there, they had a monument sign there, is grandfathered in, so it was, allowed there. And then when we took over as a lease, we were looking at potentially putting something in that same spot, but then ran into the permitting issue because of the zoning.
We've had this case in similar areas, and I'm just curious, we've had questions from the public about if it's going to be a lit up sign, like an electronic sign or a...
Yeah, no intention for it to be like a electronically lit sign or anything, no.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'd like to ask, it seems like you have a sign now, is that right?
Yes. Yep. So we put up a sign. Basically, we hung a temporary vinyl sign from the building in the meantime while we were going through this process.
What is the size of that sign?
That sign shown there in the picture is 16 feet tall by 4 feet wide.
So are you thinking that the new sign would be approximately the same size?
Actually, it would potentially go a little bit wider, so potentially going 8 feet wide by 16 feet tall.
Oh,
If it was going to be a vinyl, if it was going to be a banner hung from the side, that's what it would be. If it was going to be a monument sign, we'd be looking at more like 5 feet wide by 10 feet tall, something like that.
but it would be vertical.
It would be vertical, right?
Any other?
Well, I would think it would make a difference whether it was a monument sign or if it were attached to the building in terms of distraction. Because with drivers, we're always trying to avoid distraction, and that's why the electronic signs aren't popular, especially in the residential neighborhoods.
Sure.
So were you saying that you had regained a lease on the building, or who actually owns the building?
So Salem Evangelical Free Church owns the building, and Relevant Life Church, whom I represent, I'm on staff at the Relevant Life. We're leasing the space from Salem.
But you're not calling it Salem then?
Nope, it's not called Salem. It's called Relevant Life Church, correct?
Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Not, thank you for being here. Anyone else in the audience wish to add anything to this item, either for or against? Anyone else wish to add anything? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make
Move to
them,
approve.
oh, go ahead.
I move to approve of the motion, staff report.
Second.
Motion and second, any other discussion? Not, please take the roll.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Tasa,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Luke. We'll go on to item number 7.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item number 7 on the agenda is the Edge Edition. This is located at 1329 Fifth Avenue North. And to give some context again, with my cursor on the screen, we have Fifth Avenue North, University Drive North, and then 14th Street North, kind of to the west of the property, and 7th Avenue North. And then just north across the railroad is Fargo Brewing. And then east of the subject property is the Edge Artist Flats, which is an apartment building. So the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit, CUP, to allow outdoor recreation and entertainment in the DMU downtown mixed use zone on Lot 1, Block 1, the Edge Edition. And then please note that you received a laydown packet, which includes an updated parking plan and additional public comment letters in support of the project, which I'll touch on later in the presentation. Here's some site photos. On the top, we're looking northwest towards across the subject property from the shared driveway with Artist Flats to the east. And then facing southeast across the subject property from the BNSF, so the railroad, right away, and then you can see the Artist Flats are in the background. The zoning is DMU, downtown mixed use. No zone change is proposed, and it is currently vacant land. This is the site plan provided by the applicant. And you can see going from the south here along Fifth Avenue is the entrance, and then moving further north is the gathering area, and then towards the northwest of the property is the stage and event space. You can also see the fencing surrounding all the property lines for the function of the site. Here's some renderings of the proposal. On the top, we're facing northwest, and then on the bottom, we're facing southwest. And you can see the railroad on the top of your screen, and then the event gathering space, or the event space with the stage, and then the gathering space here closer to Fifth Avenue. Here's some traffic management that's provided by the applicant again, and this is kind of showing pedestrian circulation and emergency exits, as well as the entrance again along Fifth Avenue. And then for the loading and unloading, they pass through the to the west towards 14th Street, which is also owned by the applicant. And then here's the parking plan, which again was updated as a laid out item for you. And this shows some of the parking, the subject property in green, and then shuttle and rideshare areas, as well as the staff parking. So the engineers from Bolton and Mink, which the applicant contacted, looked at the parking demand in reference to the Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual, or the ITE for short, and found that the land use, such as the live theater, which is how the ITE defines it, of 2,000 attendees would have an estimated demand for about 760 parking spaces. And the applicant indicates on that 420 spaces are provided from the parking lots as shown on yellow on the screen. And then 495 spaces are provided through shuttle and rideshare options as described in the support letters, the narrative, and the email correspondence provided in your packet. And then you can also see in the orange dots are the designated event personnel, and then just also arrows and barriers shown in the red to indicate different functions and management of the site and their proposal for these events. And to be transparent with the staff concerns as we reviewed this, along with the engineering inspections, fire, and other city departments, the main parts of our concerns were about pedestrian safety and parking congestion. And if you have questions, we can go into each of those items. But the applicant also provided the solutions as we were transparent of communicating those concerns. And so some of the solutions the applicant provided were event signage and staff at intersections, parking areas, and the temporary barriers around the railroad, as well as permanent fencing around their property. And then additionally, parking instructions and the local shuttle rideshare options are provided for the ticket holders for each event. Here are the CUP conditions. And again, through the city staff review process, that's led to these conditions shown to help address our concerns. And so this includes changes with the parking agreements or strategies in the packet, which may require an amended CUP if there are changes. Compliance with the city permitting processes shall be maintained through all the departments. Fencing and barriers are required as shown on the parking plan, and the CUP shall be tied to the ownership. Jeremy Gordon, our traffic engineer, Ryan Erickson with fire, Sean Radnick with inspections, Captain Chris Helmig with police. We are all available to answer any specific questions for our specific departments and permitting processes. If you would like further explanation or to address, again, specific questions with that. A recommendation is on screen. We have received 3 inquiries in response to this project. One neighbor submitted 2 letters, first noting concern, and then second, as a laydown item, was showing the support of the project after a meeting with the applicant. Staff finds all criteria to be met and are recommending approval with the conditions shown on screen. Then the project representative, Jaden Nielsen, and his team are here to answer any questions. That concludes staff's presentation.
You knew I was up.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Rocky. I have a staff question. Why was there not a parking study, a third-party parking study done for this?
Yeah, we looked at their correspondence with Bolton and Mink specifically, and then our traffic engineer also analyzed what they provided through their narrative and all the other correspondence. So if you'd like, our traffic engineer could come and speak to his
No,
analysis.
I just want to know,
Okay.
because certain times we require them, and certain times we don't, and I'm trying to understand why this definitely needs a parking study, third party. Others that I've seen don't need to require this much, but this one seemed like this should have been done third party, full parking study analysis, outside of just making one comment and then having them provide us the information. That's
Sure.
all. I'm not for or against this. I just don't understand what makes that decision, Nicole? You know, who makes that, pulls that trigger?
Yeah, so that's actually, thanks for the question. That's actually an ordinance item in the Land Development Code, and it defers to the traffic engineer, and that would be Jeremy Gordon's title and position. And so the standards specific to this land use defers to that, and then Jeremy's judgment related to that.
Okay, so Jeremy makes the call on most of these that we go through? Whether
Yes.
they have a full-time, a traffic study, a third-party traffic study or not?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so, and I'm not trying to throw Jeremy.
Yeah,
I know Jeremy is here to answer.
Maybe
to
we could
talk
ask
for
Jeremy to
himself.
come up since
Yeah.
he was so nice to join us today. You talked to us about crossings too while you're up there.
Sure. The first one is, about the parking study. Bolton Bank, very reputable firm. In this situation, none of this parking is going to be happening on site. So it's very difficult to look at the parking all by itself. But what they've laid out, and this is going to be a niche neighborhood type thing, I think we see how it goes. I think they had 460 parking spots in the yellow lots. Is that correct?
420.
Okay. I mean, that's still a lot of parking on site, and there really is there's very limited street parking in this area, and there's really limited parking lots available. So I think the way people are going to get there is on foot from the downtown and from the north side. But the tricky part was that none of the parking is going to happen on this actual lot.
That makes sense. Thanks.
And then there was a comment in here about staff concerns on crossings, and so I figured you might as well cover that while you're up here.
Let's see. So on this, their site is in green. I was just out there this afternoon. This is a really quiet industrial type area. So folks that are going to be coming here are most likely going to be coming from Fargo Brewing on the sidewalks. I have big concerns. The biggest concern on here to me is the railroad track. And as long as they secure that off, that satisfies my worries about that. And there really aren't any establishments out here. There's Chubb's across the street. That's a really small establishment. For them to cross University, that's not ideal, but the good thing is that it is a one-way, so you're only looking one direction other than two, so there are breaks. So that's really our engineering and I think police's concern.
It appears on the one drawing it looks like when they're having an event, they'll have an event person stationed at the corners, I assume, to possibly act as traffic control. You know, when they talk about the walking path, the ride share shuttle, when there's an event going on there with the street, it almost appears like it's gonna be shut down.
No, from my understanding, it wouldn't be. So the shuttle can go on the south side, and the north side's available for westbound.
We could ask the app.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jeremy while he's up here?
I think you're the right person to ask, Jeremy. I'm concerned about the tracks as you are. I know that up by the dome, north of the dome on 19th Avenue, it was necessary to put a chain link fence on the median because people had been walking across that street at any time they felt, well, any place, so that they get to the restaurants and hotels, that sort of thing up there. And to look at this as being a temporary barrier to the railroad tracks, I see that as a big problem, especially with Fargo Brewing being right across the tracks. I think temporary is a bad idea. Is there any reason why it wasn't required to put in more permanent
Yeah, I think
barrier?
the applicant could maybe speak to a little bit of how those barriers are going to be put in place, but part of it was ownership. So for Fargo Brewing, there's a fence on their property, but for the, part of the temporary barriers is that it's not their ownership, but they're setting it up to prevent people to get to and from the right of way.
So, in other words, the ownership remains with who, Kilburn?
Well, whoever owns the associated property. So, and the property ownership kind of changes from lot to lot.
I see, so you're saying that this is just gonna be temporary lease for these special events?
No, the applicant is in the process of purchasing the property. And that's why condition 4 is on as one of the conditions. But, yeah, for the owner, whoever owns the property has the right to put in the fencing. So on the subject property, they're putting in permanent fencing. But then the area that is at the end of 14th Street or adjacent to the railroad, those portions will be just temporary because they don't have the right to have a permanent structure.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Luke. So in
Thank you,
these CUPs, we obviously notify property owners within a 300-foot radius of the subject property. Do you happen to know, were all the residents of the Edge Artist Flats given notice, or was it just the property owner? And I say that because, I think this is a great project, but I also don't live directly next to it. So I just want to make sure that the residents had a good opportunity to understand exactly what's going on there.
Right. Per our ordinance, it was just the property owner letter, or just the property owner. So if they distribute it to their residents, then that would be on their own behalf.
Because didn't this come up out in West Fargo at the lights about the people that are living in the buildings? And is there any stipulation on the hours of operation or what of this?
Yeah, I believe the hours of operation kind of ties to the noise ordinance, which is the amplified sound permit, I believe. So, that if you want more on that permitting process, I could ask Captain Helmick to speak to that as well, but if you'd like.
Yeah, I just remember it came up at the lights, I think at some point, if I'm not mistaken, after.
And maybe while Captain Helmick's coming up, Luke, I think you might have mentioned this, but just every permit, this is just to use this location. This is a conditional use permit to have this use at this location. Each scheduled event would still need a noise permit and temporary structure permits if there's structures, and if there's street closures that would need a permit. So there's probably about 3 or 4 other permits that would go through the city administrative processes, step by step, which is tied to kind of number 1 there in terms of if any changes happen or if we get, concerns, each of those permit processes will have a revoking portion of that element. So I'll pass it to Captain Helmuck.
To answer your question about the time limits, so because it is subject to a sound permit, that would mean that Monday through Thursday, the event would need to be done at 10 o'clock, and on Friday and Saturday, it would need to be done at 11. And again, that's part of the permitting requirement, so that'd be enforced.
So each event that goes on there has to get a permit.
Correct.
Okay.
Any
Is
other-
there a limitation on the decibel level with that permit as well? Or just as long as they're done at a certain time?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the
Yeah,
question.
is there a limit on decibel level, how loud the noise can be?
Unfortunately, there's not.
Okay.
Okay, and that is something that we're looking at on a citywide level, the changes to the ordinance, and that's something that's come up, but currently there's not a limit on how loud those events can be. It's just the time that those events can happen.
Any other
I'd
questions?
just like to mention, it was, Luke said earlier that it's a quiet commercial district, but I'm familiar with the area because I look around over there, but there are houses that stretch to the west, all the way along Fifth Avenue, going out to where that drainage area is. And then, of course, there are houses to the north of that, which would be the Unicorn neighborhood. Have those people been contacted at all?
Yeah, that would be whoever was within the 300-foot radius.
Yeah, 300 feet isn't very far.
Well, I would say, Luke, didn't we let the neighborhood associations know?
Yes.
Yes, so neighborhood associations were notified.
Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of people that haven't heard about it, but
Any other questions? Commissioner Schmidt?
Yeah, and maybe you said this already, but in the 300 foot, is that dictated by an ordinance to just the property owner? Is that like written in our ordinance or state law?
Yeah, I'm not sure what section, but I believe the Land Development Code. Yeah.
Okay. And,
Yeah, it's a standard ordinance item.
Okay. And
and I'd like to say that this has come up many, many times in the past, not only with the city, but with the parks. And the 300 feet to me has never seemed enough for, to allow a neighborhood to know what's going on, even if there are neighborhood associations. And I would say the Unicorn Neighborhood Association is not very strong. I think it's a great project, but I'm just trying to think of all of the concerns. For instance, you said street closures. What streets were you thinking of? Fifth Avenue?
The applicant didn't indicate that they would need street closures, but if an event came up or that they would need a street closure, that would have to go through some sort of, the engineering department for the street closure permit. So it could be Fifth Avenue since that's adjacent to the site, but the applicant could maybe speak to what that would look like.
Yeah, and of course, that would affect all of the people that live on that block too, if the street was closed in front of their houses.
I don't think there are any houses on Fifth Avenue.
There aren't.
There are. I'm pretty sure there are.
I'm not for a couple blocks, but
Looks like in the west edge of the screen might be some.
I did hear from the Unicorn Park neighborhood contact that was just sending the information along to their contact list. So.
Okay.
Luke, you mentioned on the, immediately to the west, the delivery and loading and unloading gateway. It's owned by the same property owners as what they're trying to acquire?
Correct. Yeah. So
Is all of this property owned by the same individuals?
no, again, the applicant could maybe speak to who, which property specifically owns, but
Okay.
the one adjacent to the west where that delivery is, that he does own that one as well.
Okay.
Is that the casket company? The former?
I'm not sure the current existing use.
Commissioner Schmidt, go ahead.
yeah, Luke, so just back to I agree with Commissioner Morgan on the 300 foot, but I think something that makes me slightly concerned with this project is the fact that only the property owner of the Edge Artist Flats next door received contact, and I know that's standard, but is there ever, like in this instance, is there discussions within staff of, are we able to notify all of the residents and mail that letter individually? And I said, because, you know, I live about a mile south of here, and when there's shows at Fargo Brewing outdoors, it's loud where I am, and I'm in the Carl Ben neighborhood. And I can't imagine where or how loud it would be directly next door. So my fear is that someone living in there that maybe has small children, 'cause I know the Edgeards Flats is a subsidized housing, they might be hearing it for the first time that there's going to be a concert venue even closer to their residence. So I guess the question is, are there ways that we can notify the residents of an apartment building, even though they're not necessarily the property owners?
Sure. I'm not sure if we have any specific process that we've discussed as far as ordinance changes for the 300 feet or addressing the individual residents there beyond the property owners. But we did make that concern known to the applicant. So, I mean, they could touch on that as well, too, of how they went about that for, having the apartment building next door.
Okay, thank you.
I do concur with that. It would be nice to have a policy that if there was an apartment building, we would notify all the residents, not just the owners. I don't know if that's something staff that we could look at doing, modifying that ordinance.
It's been this isn't the first time this has been talked about. Finding the actual name and the address to mail to apartment tenants is extremely challenging. Sometimes we can get half, sometimes we can get all of them, because they're not in a database and the population changes there. It's something we can look into, but I know the database is extremely challenging because it changes very frequently.
But it could possibly be, you could have the owner notify the tenants somehow.
Yeah, I think we can certainly take that under advisement. I know it's been advised before, and there's standards or protocol with due process and the legal actions related to how we treat every application. I'm not trying to use that as an excuse. I certainly understand the need, and that's where, we're on the ground with the neighborhood associations, the neighborhood coalition, and our partners, and ask the owner. And so I do know the owners or the applicants have part of their story to tell, and so maybe we can refer some of these questions after they've told their story and process.
For sure. I just think it'd be nice if we could get a report back from you on if we could notify apartment, current resident at the apartment number, because that seems like that would be a good process to do that we all support up here, it sounds like. So if we could look into that. Go ahead.
Luke, on the east side, that's a shared driveway with the apartment building owner, or?
Correct. The property line you can kind of see in the imagery. The property line cuts through the middle of that driveway.
Okay. And they would both maintain that? Is that
I believe so. I don't know if there's any sort of easement specifically to it, but given that the applicant doesn't propose any permanent structures, I'm unsure how their side of the maintenance would go.
And that's not intended to be an entrance on the northeast corner?
Correct. Based on their site plan, it would be just for emergency exit only.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for staff?
Luke, what's been the assessment of first responders in terms of ease of access and any capacity limitations for the quantity of guests on the site?
Yeah, those departments have been notified of this project, and we had different meetings and touch points with them. And I'm not sure of the specific code requirements, but I believe they found them sufficient for all the exits available.
Anyone else? Nope. If not, sounds like applicant, it would be great if you could come up and introduce yourself for the record and tell us a little bit more about the project, and then we'll ask some questions probably. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Jade Nielsen. I own Jade Presents, and I'm also a partner in this project.
My name's Sloan Johnson. I'm an operations coordinator at Jade Companies.
You want to tell us about the project, and then maybe we'll ask questions, or is there anything you wanted to add to the discussion? you heard?
Maybe a couple of answers I could give as I was trying to kind of nod my head with your questions. I know police had mentioned a curfew of 11 p.m. on weekends, 10 p.m. on weekdays. One note on that is we never push past 10 p.m. even on weekends. We're very strict about that for the neighborhood. So that was one note. In regards to the apartment building, the flats, we did have a meeting and some follow-up with the resident manager and the management team, and they're very much in approval of the project. So we did go beyond the owner of the property. And then I think one other thing, I think the question from Scott was in regards to that driveway. We don't have any intent to use that driveway. That would remain with the flats. And I guess one other note, sorry for Don, we do intend to fence that property entirely, and there is a Fargo Brewing fence as well. So there would not be any opportunities there to cross from one property to the other.
Very good.
Any other questions?
Do you just want to touch on the parking since we had that discussion, just to kind of give your...
Sure. I mean, I have 33 years experience doing events, and we've handled, for example, Blue Stem since 2009. We're very familiar with shuttling and drive share and a number of different options along those lines when a site might not have sufficient parking directly on site. So, one thing we worked on here, as you can see from the parking map, there's not a tremendous amount of parking with, immediate access in that Fifth Avenue area. We were able to follow the guideline from the traffic study and the engineer, where I think they had suggested 760 spots, if I'm not mistaken. So as Luke mentioned, we have roughly 460 on site currently. And then another roughly 500 off-site for shuttling services. There were some parking lots that we decided to take out of the mix, for example, Chubb's. And I think the concern there is not having people walk across University, so we eliminated that. And certainly over the next, number of months, we're going to be acquiring additional parcels and additional parking close to the property as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks interesting on a map, but I know how far I walk at Blue Stem, and it seems to work okay between our parking and the venue. So
right, and just one example, we've been doing these events at Fargo Brewing for 7 years, and we've never had designated parking. It's all been street parking, a little bit in Family Fair, and a little bit in that former Sanford lot. But that was it for the same number of patrons. So our goal here is to really have a much better family-friendly, grassy, park-like atmosphere, and not on pavement, not on parking lot. But then obviously part of that process was to secure additional parking in the area. So I have no doubt that we will have, well over 700 or 800 parking spots within that area, within this first season.
one other question that came up was on noise. Do you guys have any in your contracts? Do you have any noise criteria, or is it pretty much just dependent?
I think from an artist's perspective, they would like no limitations, but certainly we understand that there does need to be limitations for how much that sound carries. If you look at our site plan, Luke, I don't know if you can go back maybe couple more there. We went ahead and added in some bleacher seating, 2 reasons. One, it will help impede that sound direction going to the northeast. And then also, it's much more patron friendly than just standing, for example. But as far as limitations, we don't currently have a specific dB limitation. But that's certainly something I understand that the noise ordinance is being looked at and will remedy that.
Any other questions?
Even if we had a decibel level, would we even be able to monitor it? You know what I mean? Do we even have the capability?
Yeah, I know the noise ordinance is a discussion the city's having, and there's methods out there that they're looking at doing. It's a different,
But current state, probably not.
there's certain governors and things you can put on the speaker systems, and is my understanding, but yeah, we're not quite there yet, I think.
So I'm just trying to get this straight in my mind. You don't own the property at this time, but you're in the process of buying it.
That's correct.
And you're in the process of buying other buildings to the west.
We currently own a number of the other properties in that neighborhood.
Oh, are they adjacent properties?
Yes,
Okay, so going over toward 14th Street.
correct.
Okay, is that where that casket company is?
That building has been long sold, so there is no casket company there anymore. There's a new
The
owner.
building's gone?
The building is still there. I think it's 1335 Fifth Avenue North.
Oh, I thought that probably was still a problem, that building.
I think there was some issues with that building. It's owned by another gentleman. We have not acquired that. It's owned by somebody who has one tenant, but I don't know who the tenant is or what they're utilizing that building for.
Okay, well, that was the one where all the tires accumulated.
Right.
Yeah, and so I don't know what a tenant would do with all those tires.
Yeah, we've been working on acquiring that property for about a year.
Well, I hope you do. It's about time. I had another question for you. We have gone through the train ordinances, in terms of the sound. And as far as the whistles go, I think that there is, where does it stop? What street does that stop? Because I was thinking it might affect your performances and what you are to offer, what you have to offer.
We've had, like I said, the last 7 years, we've been doing these events at Fargo Brewing. So we've had the train whistles. I think some artists love it and some probably don't. But certainly that's not something we can stop on our end. But I do know that they blow the whistle through that area.
Yeah, and that was something that we worked on for years ago to try to extend that, and then Moorhead did after that. So I just was wondering if there's any possibility of extending that out further to the west. There still are a lot of people who complain about it in my neighborhood, Jefferson, which is on the south side of Main Avenue, but they talk about the train whistles all the time and where they think they start, and I think it would be a great benefit to this enterprise and maybe others going forward if we could talk about that again. Any possibilities?
So there is a quiet zone study still going on in this area, and we as a city are still looking at potentially implementing a project through here to implement or extend the quiet zone out of downtown to this area. So that's still something that we are currently working on.
Good. Well, what are you thinking about in terms of the furthest west then at this point?
Go all the way over to the crossing at, I believe it's 18th Street. That one would be the start.
Maybe you can update that at a later date for us, where you're at on that.
Yeah. I would say, why not 25th?
Commissioner Stoffern, go ahead.
Well, a couple things. With regard to the areas you identified as areas where people can park, I remember we were having another issue in front of us right in that corner. An establishment, was very concerned about the parking in the family fair lot. You must have some kind of agreements worked out with them?
Correct, yeah. A few years back, we were able to come to an agreement to utilize that parking lot.
Okay.
We typically staff that parking lot with an individual to make sure that they do not park in a loading dock or in front of their building. So yeah, we've been able to work through that about maybe 3 years ago.
Okay, the second question is, I see you've got a spot for restrooms. Is those temporary? Are you going to have, is there any plan, to have utilities and tie into city sewer and have something more permanent in there for events?
I think the use at this point in time would be temporary. So it would be temporary, porta potties, for example, or restroom trailers that would be brought in and brought out on a per event basis.
Okay.
Commissioner.
Another thing I was
Hold on,
interested. Oh, go ahead.
Commissioner Gunkelman and Commissioner Schmidt.
Is it your intent with concessions to serve beer at these events and with your permitting process?
Us ourselves, no. Certainly, we would talk to somebody with a proper liquor license or an E-permit to handle that,
Commissioner Schmidt.
along with any other concessions and,
Sure.
ice cream, everything else too,
Yep.
as well.
You had mentioned you currently own other parcels in this area and are looking to maybe acquire additional over there. If you're able to, are you able to share maybe your vision for this neighborhood and what maybe acquiring those parcels means, whether that's this outdoor space gets bigger or just rehabilitation of those buildings, just so that we and then people in the neighborhood can maybe know what to expect with that change?
Sure, I think we can get into that a bit. I mean, we do have a long-term vision in the neighborhood. Our office is in the neighborhood. We acquired Angels Arena building a few years back. So our hope long-term is to renovate that into an indoor event space, which Fargo desperately needs, especially without the Civic Center and without the old venue and those sort of things. So there would be, obviously at that point, we're looking at a much larger project, and that's probably 2 to 3 years down the road.
Thank you. Commissioner Morgan?
Oh, let's see. Pass for now.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
Oh, I did want to ask, is there a relationship between Fargo Brewing and this enterprise?
Yes, I'm a partner in Fargo Brewing, so they're
Yes.
very much aware of what we're doing. We found that utilizing that parking lot was restricting regular business to some degree. So that's one reason for the move. And they wrote a support letter. They're very much in support of this project being adjacent to them.
You mean Family Fair? You said the parking.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so there is a relationship with Fargo Brewing.
correct.
And is it a fiduciary relationship?
This project,
Yes.
I think Fargo Brewing may very well be on site as a vendor.
Okay, but they're not part of the ownership?
No.
And Kilborn is still the owners of the property itself?
Kilborn currently owns the property. We have a purchase agreement intending to close in a few weeks here.
Okay, that's good.
Jade, was your comment in relation to the Fargo Brewing parking lot? Does that mean you wouldn't hold concerts there, or would it just be less, be another option?
I think our hope and our intent would be to move everything from that Fargo Brewing parking lot to this site.
Okay.
And not be jockeying in any way back and forth.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Sloan, anything additional on your end?
Nope.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
We'll see if anyone else in the audience wish to add anything on this item, either for or against. Anyone else wish to add anything? If not, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, any additional questions for staff, or what are your wishes?
Make motion to approve.
Second?
Motion second, any discussion? Seeing none. Thanks for the good questions today. We'll take the roll.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Tasa,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Luke. Moving on, number 8, we'll invite Donald back up here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our item 8 here is it's not even summer and we're already talking about vacation. It's a vacation right-of-way here on the first industrial subdivision of Beardsley's Edition. Just to locate you, here's the railroad track here. This is 7th Avenue North, 8th Avenue North, 25th Street. This is 22nd Street. As you see, it has never really been used as a street. It was dedicated on the Beardsley's Edition plat in 1882. There's a 70-foot wide dedication. And then in 1951, there was the additional 23.5-foot dedication here, which is what we're looking at today. You probably been by this. The property owner here on the adjacent lots is John T. Jones Construction. Here I'm just, 7th Avenue is behind me. We're looking northward on that right-of-way. You saw some railroad tracks in there. They are a private spur. They haven't been in use for some time. This area that's fenced is about the area that would be vacated. And then here we're standing with our back to, or this little bit of 8th Avenue North here, and then looking south. And again, this fenced area is about the area that would be vacated. The property is zoned LI Limited Industrial. There would be no change to that. Pursuant to state statute, what will happen is when this gets vacated, it just becomes part of the adjacent properties. The properties just get bigger. The plat here shows, again, the John T. Jones property and the area to be vacated. There is one little small lot up here that Jones recently acquired from the city of Fargo. And so this, again, has not been in use for a street for some time. I'm not sure that it was ever used as a street. In the future, in the next several months, the applicant and the surrounding properties may come back with the vacation of the rest of this right-of-way. But this is a complex area to work in, and so it was easiest just to do it a step at a time because there are two separate dedications there. So again, just a straightforward vacation of right-of-way plat. As stated in the staff report, vacations of right-of-way, as commissioners are probably familiar, are not in our Fargo ordinance. They are in the state statute as referenced there. There's some findings to be made, and there's a specific advertising deadline for this. So the city commission will take final action once that those timelines have been met and the city staff has reviewed the vacation plat. The applicant, Tim Vanderzanden of John T. Jones Construction, is with us this afternoon. They wish us to address the commission. The motion for approval is stated in the staff report. It's shown on the screen. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Any questions for Donald? Have you talked to Jade about taking your stand-up over to his new venue? No? All right. Is the applicant here wish to add anything? Any questions for the applicant? No. Seeing none, is there anyone else in the audience that wish to add anything either for or against? Anyone else wants to add anything? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion to accept the findings of staff as presented.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Seeing none, please take the roll.
Shuey,
Aye.
Stoffer,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Donald. Moving on to item 9 with Elena.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Elena Espeseth, and today I will be presenting to you agenda item number 9. This is Arneson's Addition. It's a conditional use permit for alternative access plan for reduced parking. The subject property is located at 11 and 21 18th Street South. For reference, this is Main Avenue, 18th Street, and Jefferson Elementary. Also, please note that this location of item number 9 and the next item, number 10, are the same subject property. However, they have different names, addition names. The CUP, the applicant requested to be recorded or finalized prior to the replat, just for being able to approve permits in a timely manner. The first image was taken looking northwest, looking at the subject property from the intersection of 18th Street and First Avenue South. The second image was taken looking northeast, looking at the subject property from across First Avenue South. The subject property is zoned LI or limited industrial, and no zone change is proposed. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for an alternative access plan to reduce parking. 2 religious institutions are requesting to operate within the existing structure. The site only accommodates 72 stalls, while the LDC requires 106 stalls. The 2 religious institutions have proposed to offset service times and days to accommodate for parking. The largest single church size would be 175 members, which requires 70 stalls based on the LDC parking ratio. The CUP for alternative access plan is requesting a parking stall reduction of 32% or 34 stalls. Again, and if the CUP is approved, this will carry through with the replat. The recommended motion is shown on the screen with the following conditions for the CUP. Any expansion of the building or expansion and or change of the use from religious institution shall terminate the CUP. Religious institutions on site must keep different service times and days, and a minimum of 70 spaces is required on site. To date, staff has received no inquiries or concerns regarding the subject property. Brian Patgale from Houston Engineering is here to answer any questions. And staff's recommendation is for approval as stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. Thank you, and that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Elena. Any questions for staff?
I was just wondering who owns the building? Do these two religious organizations own it, or are they leasing?
They're tenants, they're leasing.
Okay, and who actually owns the building?
MEC Partners, LC is the owner.
Okay. I know it's had a history. The police were there for a while, were they not?
Yeah, so looking back at permits, prior to 2020 is when the police fraternity was located there.
Okay. And before that, the Teamsters.
Correct, yep.
Okay, but has it been the same ownership the whole time?
I am not positive on that. Yeah, I'm uncertain.
Okay. I've got another question. With what we call Jefferson Park, there's an extension of it that goes north to Main Avenue. And we've talked many times, both with the Parks Department and the Neighborhood Association, of being able to continue that walkway that goes to along that west side of that property. Are you aware of that?
I have not personally had conversation. However, I'm sure that the Parks District would have that as an item.
I don't think they own it. I'm not sure who owns it. Do you know, Nicole? Oh, yeah.
Commissioner, that is Southeast Cass Water Resources District right away. There's a drain underneath there.
Yes, it continues on north, under Main Avenue.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Yeah, so that is not part of this property.
That is correct, ma'am. That's not part of this property.
Okay,
And when Elena does the next item, she'll reference that property. And just so you know, Commissioner, as the Planning Department and Parks Department meet monthly, and we did in our most recent meeting discuss this with park staff, so they knew that this project was going on, so.
okay,
Thank you, Donna.
thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, is the applicant here and wishes to add anything? You were getting jealous, huh? You had to come up for this one?
I had to come up for this one. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Pattengale with Houston Engineering. This actually came about, just for a quick summary on this. These churches are actually already in the building. They're just doing some remodeling, and it actually came out as part of the remodeling permit because of the change in use from the previous uses. It triggered some of the parking requirements. So they're already holding services on alternate days and alternate times. So it's functioning as it is today. This is more of they've come in for the remodel permit, and through staff discovered that, hey, this is a change in use. We have to actually update all our code requirements. It's sort of something that sort of slipped by the radar by accident when they change the uses. It happens occasionally. So we're basically here trying to clean up this stuff and fix what's already there to be in compliance with the code as much as possible.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Seeing none, does anyone else wish to add anything on this item? Anyone else here either for or against? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll make the motion to accept the findings of staff as presented.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? Not, please take the roll.
Morgan,
Aye.
Shuey. Stoffern,
Aye.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Tasa,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye, and the motion passes. Elena, on item 10.
Item number 10 is Harvest Church Edition. This is a minor subdivision. Again, this is located at 11 and 21 18th Street South. The top image was taken looking west at the existing building from across 18th Street South, and the bottom image was taken facing north along the southeast cast drain right away. The subject property is on the right. Again, the zoning is LI, limited industrial, and no zone change is proposed. North on the plat is to your left. The applicant is requesting a replat of portions of Lot 1 and all of Lots 2 and 3, Block 1, Arnison's Addition, into a one-lot subdivision entitled Harvest Church Addition. The intent of the replat is to remove a lot line that is running through the existing structure. So additionally, the applicant is requesting a subdivision waiver for drain setback. Drain number 3 is an underground drain that abuts the west side of the subject property. Typically, a 175-foot drain setback is required from the center line of the drains. The subdivision waiver is for modification of this drain setback requirement from 175 feet to 37 feet on the east side of the drain center line. It was reviewed by the city engineer and felt that 37 feet is sufficient space for underground pipes to allow for repair and maintenance. Based on their review from the drain location, no easement or dedication is required on the plat, as there is sufficient room on the southeast cast right-of-way to safely excavate and access the drainage pipes. To date, staff has received no inquiries or concerns regarding the subject property, and Brian Pangale from Houston Engineering is here to speak on this item as well. And staff's recommendation is for approval, as stated in the staff report and shown on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Elena?
Yeah, I do. So what we were just talking about a few minutes ago was there's a sidewalk that goes along that drain on the east side. And typically, the Teamsters kept picnic tables out there. And so if there were people that were walking that way and going up to Main Avenue, you know, there was kind of a nice area there. It was kept cut by the Teamsters. And we have talked for many years, not just with the Parks Department, but with the neighborhood and trail connection throughout the city, that we were hoping that, you know, in the future at some time, we may be able to connect that line, that north-south line, with at least Main Avenue. And so my concern is that there would be enough number of feet there for that still to remain a pleasant area rather than cut off from the something to 37 feet.
Well, I'm assuming the Parks District, if they were to be implementing that, that would have to stay within that 37 feet, and or they would be required for any maintenance for that drain.
Elena, hold on. Maybe Nathan or Jeremy have a comment on the drain or the bike path there. Or
Sure. So that legal drain is owned by Southeast Cass Water Resource District. So I would suggest, you know, as a park board member, if you're interested in any sort of improvements there, that maybe have the Fargo Park District staff reach out to Southeast Cass Water Resource District to see what type of improvements could occur on there. I know this plat is not changing the green space that exists out there today at all. So the remaining opportunities, or the existing opportunities, will be able to remain even after this plat's executed.
Okay, I was just wondering about the 37 feet from the middle of the drain. That doesn't seem like very much.
Yep, so the 37 feet that Elaine is referring to is the existing box culvert that's within Southeast Cass Water Resource District's property today. So that's just demonstrating that if or whenever there's a point in time where that box culvert has reached the end of its useful life, we still have sufficient room to replace that box culvert and not impact the adjoining property.
Okay, well, I haven't been aware of the discussion with the Park District. It's been primarily with the neighborhood, Fargo Neighborhood Coalition, and with the Jefferson Neighborhood Association, with the idea of making those bikeways more accessible to people and more pleasant in terms of transitioning from one neighborhood to another. So I haven't talked to the Park District about this. What did they actually have to say at that meeting?
I think it's not a project yet, nor has there been discussion about this exact trail with the Park District that I'm aware of. So this would need to be set as a public project or designated as a public project through coordination with parks and city and neighborhood
So what we're looking at is just, does this
and drain board.
Does
Yeah.
this qualify for the waiver for the drain setback, which the advice from the engineer is that it does?
Correct. Yep.
Yes, because it's an existing drain.
Yeah, but my question is, are we going to be able to have enough space left there for
Yes.
future development?
Yes.
Okay,
Nothing's changing there.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schmidt?
Maybe this is just an education question for myself, but you mentioned that there's a setback requirement of, is it 150 feet from the center line of those drains?
175.
Okay, so 175 feet. But the Southwest Cast said that 37 is sufficient.
Correct. So that's typically for new development, new plats that would maybe even be dedicating that portion of the lot to Southeast Cass.
And I guess, so the question is, 175 feet that's a lot of space from the center line of a drain, especially if they can make 37 feet work. So maybe the education question is, what sort of defines this 150 foot? And Donald's got his hand up back there.
Elena, I can,
175.
if you mind doing that. So Commissioner, here's how that works, is 175 feet is for an open drain. So the idea is that if they ever expand the drain, feel free to chime in here, Mr. Borblum. If they ever want to expand or adjust the drain, they can adjust the slope of the drain, which is why it's such a long way. This drain is underground, so that's not going to happen in the future. And in previous dealings with this drain, like across First Avenue, we had a similar thing where the drain runs through the properties, and we had a narrower area to do it. So the future sloping of the drain is not a concern on the underground drains. And Mr. Borblum had some additional comments.
Yeah, I was just going to add, the 175 feet on either side of the centerline drain was really developed as part of the watercourse setback ordinance that was developed back in 2012, I believe it was. And that was really to determine what is the appropriate area or cross-sectional area of the legal drain to make sure that we have appropriate side slopes on those drains so we don't see sloughing of the banks like we have seen in other spots of the town. So there's some analysis that went on back at that time to determine what is that appropriate width in other areas. But like Donald mentioned, this is area of town where the drain has been buried essentially for many years. So that's why we can support the lesser area.
All right, thanks for that clarification.
Mr. Kunkelman?
One quick question. When the owners are not the churches, why was this project titled Harvest Church Edition? I'm just curious.
So they actually choose the titles or the names of the addition.
Oh,
so that was
okay.
what the applicant chose for this replat.
Okay, and even though they're just renters of the building, they can, okay, that was just a point of curiosity, that's all.
Next month, we'll see the Gunkelman edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a mystery to me too. And it just seemed interesting that they were able to do that if they're just a lease or a tenant. And that what ownership do they have of these decisions should they leave the building?
They don't.
Well, the replat will carry through no matter what. So then the title doesn't necessarily dictate anything with ownership.
Yeah. Somebody can change it again if they want. Any other questions on this one? Does the applicant wish to add anything? Please stay within the roping.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Brian Patton with Houston Engineering. Just to speak to the title, the plats have to have a unique title. We can't have a duplicate plat. So it's simply a matter of convenience. There's no real ownership interest where it's, it's a new development, like a residential development or something. So it was just sort of a name of convenience, essentially, on that respect. So yeah, it just doesn't, one of those things that just sort of pulled out of air that made sense at the time.
Any questions for the applicant? Does anyone else in the audience wish to add anything, either for or against? Anybody else here wants to add anything? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioners, what are your wishes?
I'll move to approve per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion and second. Anyone else want to talk about flood protection of setbacks? No? All right. Take the roll.
Gunkelman,
Aye.
Morgan,
Aye.
Rosenberg,
Aye.
Shuey,
Aye.
Schmidt,
Aye.
Tassa,
Aye.
Stoffern,
Aye.
Schneider.
Aye. Motion passes. Anything else for us today?
I'd like to tell a story.
All right, we have a
Is that
couple minutes
okay?
for that. Sure.
All right, it's about the drain. At one time, before it was officially, the drain was created, it was used to be called the slough that ran through Fargo. And it empties up actually north of Fargo. And what we had in the Jefferson neighborhood was called Long Lake. And that body of water between Fifth Avenue and where the apartment buildings are and First was actually a body of water that was there year-round. And people would go there and swim in the summertime. And when they had circuses, they'd bring the animals down there. And there was actually a Long Lake Hotel on Main Avenue. And but people dumped things in there, like old refrigerators and stoves and anything they wanted to get rid of. And one day, the lake was on fire. There was fire on the surface of the lake. And the way that it had happened was Muscatel was immediately to the north across Main Avenue, and they had been dumping their oil into the drain. And it floated down to Long Lake, and one day it lit on fire. And that was when the city of Fargo decided to do something different and created that long drain that goes all the way actually south of 13th Avenue, past NDSU and way up to the river north.
Interesting. Well, now we know where Don's bodies are buried. But
Just to piggyback on her story, that drain runs by the fraternity house that I was in college, and kind of the same story. It was open at that time. The ditch was open by the fraternity house, and there was always a lot of oil residue on top of the drain. And so mysteriously one day, nobody knows exactly how, the drain caught on fire. And it got hot enough that it singed the paint on part of the fraternity house. But again, kind of to Don's story, it also generated the interest. That's the drain that also runs through the soccer fields. The drain by the fraternity house, that chunk of it, along with NDSU, that got filled in. The fraternity house got half of the property, and the T-lot, I think it is, at NDSU got the other half of the property. And like to Don's concern about these ditches, anything you do on top of those ditches, the watershed district has the right to come back in, and because I think the fraternity house ended up putting a volleyball court, which is probably mostly on top of this drainage. So I had the same story, Don.
It's a good thing that thing got filled in, because I remember some guys that couldn't make it out of that ditch from time.
Well, with cars,
we have two form reporters in the audience, and we're working really hard to get a story. Appreciate everybody's time. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we're adjourned.